Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. Today is April 27th, 2023, and we are joined by a special guest today, Dan Leary, CEO and founder of Denowatts. Looking forward to having a conversation with him about his best kept secret in the solar industry. So stick around for that. Wanted you to know that the Clean Power Hour is brought to you as usual by Chin Power Systems, or CPS America as they're known, makers of America's #1 three-phase string inverter. With over 6 gigawatts shipped in the US, the CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 kW to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication and controls and energy storage solutions. Go to chinpowersystems.com to find out more. The Clean Power Hour can be found at cleanpowerhour.com. Check us out, give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify, and please tell a friend about the show. That is how we are going to collectively speed the energy transition. With that, I want to welcome John Weaver, aka the Commercial Solar Guy, and my co-host to the show. Welcome, John.
Hey, Tim. I hope everything's going well in the Midwest. Northeast is having lots of solar, lots of clogged up interconnections, great sunlight. We got our own New England duck curve, and I don't know, all kinds of cool stuff. It's springtime, so good solar production
It's
numbers.
about time the duck curve came to the East Coast, right?
We have one in any ISO because of the massive behind-the-meter solar that's located in Massachusetts, mostly Massachusetts. So I'm proud to say I'm part of the problem. So I've shoveled this hole.
You are definitely part of the problem, John Weaver.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to welcome Dan Leary to the show today. We're going to spend half an hour geeking out on Denowatts. Check out their technology at denowatts.com, Denowatts. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Thanks, John. It's great to be here.
Nice to meet you, Dan.
We were kidding you in the pre-show that you are the best kept secret in the solar industry because many people do not know about Denowatts. But tell us a little bit about yourself because you have been around the block in the solar industry, and why did you start Denowatts?
Oh boy, we only have half an hour, right? Well, I've made a career out of the solar industry and helping to make it better, more efficient, get more solar out there, and drive down the costs of solar. So in a previous lifetime, I built a company that does EPC and develops, own, operates. It's an IPP now, and also spun out of that a company that makes racking to help commercialize flat roof racking. And as I got to know solar, working through those earlier in my career, I started to realize, wow, one of the big impediments to growing this industry is going to be data. And so as I left those and started off at this current adventure, Denowatts, almost 10 years ago now, the focus is to get better data in the hands of decision makers to make solar more reliable, to make it safer, to drive down the cost and make it more competitive in the grid.
Yes. And you shouldn't be so shy about the companies that you've been starting because they're quite well known. You know, you're the co-founder of Nexamp, you're the co-founder of Panelclaw. Panelclaw being the #1 flat roof racking product in North America. Amazing product. That's how I know you. is because of Costa Nicolau at Panelclaw. So thank you and shout out to Costa Nicolau. But
so Dan, you've done some solar. You have a little experience in this field, would you say?
I have. Yeah. So I started the career. I got out of the Army and decided to get working on finding a job. I couldn't find a job that was really well suited. So I did like what every solar entrepreneur does. I asked my parents if I could install a solar array on their roof, and they said yes. And so I did. And from there, that was 2006, and that was great timing. With the ITC coming into play and all. So from there, it's just been rolling up our sleeves, kicking over rocks, and and finding the little things about the industry that make it inefficient.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. 2006 would put you almost 20 years. You're up in well, 15, 16, 17. You're in a smaller chunk of people. Anybody that's been in the solar industry before like 2010, they've just done so many things and learned so many things. So that's pretty cool. And you've worked, I mean, those are both companies that anybody from the Northeast and now nationwide, both of them know. So that's cool. And of course, behind you, you have a bifacial module there that looks like those are half-cut cells. And that's just, that's modern person with cool office gear. Everybody else on the internet has books behind their thing. We have solar panels because we're much cooler. So pretty solid.
Nice. Yeah, we're a technology company, so we gotta stay up to date. Yeah.
Nice.
So Dan, tell us a little more about Denowatts. What is it? You can show us the device because you can literally hold this thing in your hand, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. But I also like to say, the AI is not just coming for our jobs; it's coming for our solar farms, but in a good way. In the case of Denowatts, so what is it that you do, and what differentiates you from other performance monitoring products on the market?
Yeah, so we're not a monitoring company. We exist to make the monitoring companies and performance engineers and asset managers to make everything better. We set out when we first started Denowatts to create a better weather station, to streamline it, because weather stations were one of those things that it's the smallest thing. It's kind of an afterthought, especially 10 years ago, where in order to understand your true performance, you had to have a weather station, but you also had to have it installed right, had to have the right sensors, and nobody did back then. I mean, it was rare to come across something that was set up right. So we developed this. This is the Deno sensor. Hopefully you can see that okay.
Yep.
You can see it's about the size of a TV remote control. It's wireless and self-powered. And what it's doing is it's taking irradiance and temperature measurements, and we take your energy model, typically PV-Syst or whatever other energy model you're using, Daily Energy, Plant Predict, PV-Lib, and we actually program it into this. And every 5 seconds, we use the measurements we took and calculate how much power should be coming out of the solar array. So instead of taking, what we kind of thought was a science experiment looking thing of a weather station that we used to install 10 years ago, we said, let's streamline that. Let's use this new thing called the Internet of Things, which was new 10 years ago. And let's find a way to talk to these devices. Let's have devices that we can talk to every minute of the day. Let's use machine learning to get the data and find insights from the data. And so, combining those things together, it's really become a technology company. And this is our 4th generation of the technology.
Very good. So it's a device that sits on the array. It's a digital weather station, and then it talks to a computer internally that has a model of your project, a so-called digital twin. Mm-hmm. What is digital twin benchmarking? Because it's not new to the energy industry, but I think many energy professionals still don't really understand the value of digital twin benchmarking.
Yeah, well, a digital twin is a term that's kind of come into the industry maybe several years ago. It can mean different things to different people, but I can tell you what it means to us is to be able to create a digital replication of the array that we're trying to monitor. So that's when I say, when we take your energy model, which is your model that is going to tell us under these light conditions and these temperatures how much power is going to come out of the array. We take that and we program it into this, and we've built this to mirror the performance of solar modules and the inverters. And so by running through all those calculations, we create this digital copy of what the array should be doing at any given time. And that data gets pushed back up to our server. And then we compare that with the data coming from the meter to find out if what you actually did produce. And when you compare the two, you get what's called the performance index, or the expected performance index. And our objective is, solar operators, is to have 100%, is to be making exactly what you thought you should be. One of the interesting things that I learned when I started this company, I went out and did market research and talked to a lot of asset operators. I said, hey, how much power, how's your portfolio performing? And I would hear answers like, oh, we're doing 103 or 106% of our expected power. And, congratulations, but wait a minute. That means you've been too conservative in your modeling. So really, by getting more power than you expected, you left something on the table. So to us, it's digital twin is really about trying to deliver what will come out of the array, based on not just the energy model, but lessons learned from all the data we've been collecting.
If you under project, and as a developer at Nexamp, you know this very well, Dan, if you under project the amount of electricity that your system will generate when you sell that solar power plant, you're going to underprice it. And when you think about the fact that every kilowatt hour is multiplied out 365 days times 25 years on these contracts, 1, 2, 3, 10% of
Yes.
missing production, that's a lot of return on investment. And this is the key volume. This is, we got to get above this break-even price as developers, and then every penny above that break-even price is worth so much value to a solar developer. So it's like, to hear somebody say, yeah, we're overproducing by 3%, as the guy on the front end who's doing their best to support their family building a project, it's like, oh, there goes my kid's second year of college I just forgot to bill for, or something like that. At least that's how I would feel.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to overproduce, but not too much. You don't want to sandbag too much. So that's oof.
And then on the flip side of that, is what's become a common topic is sub-hourly modeling. And all these models are based off of decades of historic weather data sets. They might not have great resolution to them, and as a result of that, that's believed to be the cause of some underperformance. When the electrical system seems to be doing fine, but the predictions are it's coming in below predicted. So a second part of this is the benefit of this approach is having very high resolution data. Like we're not in sub-hourly data, we're in sub-minute data. So we're having this calculation done every 5 seconds, because this device won't miss a cloud that comes over in 5 seconds, and that's important too.
So we just had a question from Patrick, and Tim, I love this feature you have where we can see everybody's things. So, I mean, you can see this on your screen. There are often data discrepancies between different gear. Now, you actually want this item installed and living with the system indefinitely, whereas Patrick here asked, might you put this item out before installing? But that would be a different way of doing it, Dan. Would you put this potential item out there as a pre-read so that a developer can get a little better feel versus the NREL data or the NASA data, whichever data we use? Might you put out there first on its own little standalone unit?
I think it's a great idea to put it out first. I will tell you that nobody has yet, but that might just be because nobody's pursued it yet. I have had IEs ask us, because a lot of times, if you have an IE that's proposing to set up a Met Tower and other things at a site to get that data and maybe get 6 months or a year's worth of data, well, there's a lot of value in that data, especially we're talking about bifacial systems, and what's the albedo and what are the other components to set up. So if you decide to set up a kit, we can certainly do that. It's very simple. It can, wireless and self-powered. One or two of these talks to our gateway, which will send the data all back up to our server. We can ship that with a small cell modem, so it can be very economical. But the benefit of capturing that data is understanding the sub-hourly impacts that are very regional, and it might help to validate the predicted data set.
So you just said albedo. Is this a bifacial unit? Does this unit have the ability to pick up albedo type stuff?
Yes. So we have,
Sweet.
you probably can't see it on the solar module sitting behind me, but I'll show you an upfront one. So this is an RPOA sensor. So it uses the same pyranometer that we have on the main kit. So if you have your Dino pointing in the plane of array, you can plug into the back of the Dino a bifacial
Sweet.
RPOA sensor, and it's going to be taking the measurements at the exact same time. And one of the neat things that we innovated with this is, you can see the back of it is it's the same type of attachment system you have on your transponder of your car. So it literally bolts on there in about 5 seconds, and that's how we do a lot of. In fact, the majority of our systems now are bifacial modules. Most of them probably trackers.
Dan, I know that you recently achieved ISO certification for capacity testing. Tell us why that's so interesting and important.
Yes. That's kind of the story of Denowatts. We started this whole thing saying we can build a better technology to fix all this stuff, and in a way, and we did that, and that was kind of easy. But then we had to say, okay, now why do we feel like a sort of a round peg in a square hole? Because the whole world seems to be operating off of these standards that have been written, and standards are great. They make the whole industry bankable. It makes things safe and reliable. And what we realized, maybe probably 4 or 5 years ago, is that, boy, we need to help evolve the standards, and we need to get in line with them, because it's, innovating's not enough. And at the same time, just blindly following the standards isn't always enough. So what we do is we had to work the two together. They're kind of a yin and a yang. They have to tango. So we went out and we said, what would be the best standards to follow for what we do? And we found ISO 17025, which is the accreditation. It's not even a certification, it's actual accreditation for laboratories. It's the highest accreditation in the world for laboratories for calibrating and for testing. So in 2019, I believe, we got accredited for our calibration, meaning when you get a Dino, these sensors are calibrated within 1% of the known standard, of the traceable standard, which is excellent. And then a couple of years later, we said, after we had a bunch of people asking us to do capacity testing, we said, well, geez, we could probably go off and find a way to get accredited to do capacity testing as well. And we did that. It took us about a year, and I think we were the first people in the world that I know of that were able to do a field capacity test and have an accreditation to do so. The importance of that, and the whole reason why ISO 17025 is important, is because it talks about measurement uncertainty, following written guidelines, and having peer reviews. So there is a tremendous amount of work that goes into making sure that it is a truly bankable standard. And when somebody says they have an accreditation to do something, that it's been well documented and reviewed.
And when we're talking about capacity, are we talking sunlight capacity? Because I think of the capacity market, where a solar power plant gets paid for guaranteeing that it's going to work at 30 megawatts in the middle of the summer. When you say capacity, what exactly does that mean for us lesser educated?
Capacity means the rated. Think of it as the DC capacity, the rated output of the solar array. So when we say capacity test, we're just talking about the electrical mechanical components of the project. You call it, if we call it a 20 megawatt project, and that's what it's going to produce at standard test conditions, then we need to prove it. And the way to prove that is what's called a capacity test. It's typically done at the end of construction. So as the EPC is finishing up the build, and they're getting ready to do the final transfer to the IPP or the future owner of the project, they'll have to prove, in order to close the financing, that the array is going to make what the model said it would. And
Right.
the capacity test, it's like a 3 to 5 day test typically, where you prove that out.
And that's part of your commissioning process. You test your voltages, you do some spot checking on torques, and you do a capacity test. And I don't do a capacity test on any of my projects, so now I know I'm selling my customers short, and also potentially putting myself at risk in the future when I have power production guarantees and an O&M contract. If my capacity is blown from the start, I'm starting with a hand behind my back, and that's probably not a smart thing. So you mentioned, do you by any chance sell one of these little things on like some sort of stand-up kit that I can buy and just plop it down next to my site and like, just have one for all of my sites, put it on my roofs or anything like that? Or or is it just buy a unit, figure it out? And, we build stuff all the time.
Yeah, so maybe we can just walk through a typical site. So say you have a 500 kilowatt site, and it's a rooftop site. So what we would do is on our website, we have a denowatts.com top right, we have a quotation request button. You can tell us, so I've got a 500 kilowatt rooftop project. It's got monofacial modules and a couple other details about the address, and we'll put together a quotation for you. For a typical project, we sell the Dinos for about $400 each, and along with them is a service. So the service for each Dino is $200 a year. And for that service fee, we're providing all the data services for it. We're providing quality control, data quality management that we're constantly looking at. And we're also making sure that if we see something, that we can identify it. For example, if there's soiling, if the sensor falls out of the proper alignment, we can communicate that back to you. And finally, part of that is the warranty. Is as long as you have the service ongoing, is that we warranty them. If there's ever an issue with it, we'll swap it out by sending out a new one.
All right.
So we should also talk about your upcoming webinar. You have a webinar on May 4th, specifically about this phenomenon of capacity testing, but also a technical note that you have from DNV. Tell us about the webinar.
Oh, yeah. So the webinar is to talk about the capacity test process. So it's going to be an overview that covers everything from we have a template, a contract exhibit template that you can put right into your EPC contract, for example. And then we're going to talk about test boundaries, the types of sensors you use, the risks, and measurement uncertainties, things like that. And then at the end of it, how to basically, it's a click of a button capacity test. So once you have our hardware installed, you say, I want to run a capacity test from April 23rd to April 27th, hit a button, and then we deliver that report to you. So it's we'll talk about the steps to get from A to Z with that. And then as part of this, we'll talk about a recent engagement we did with DNV. DNV is a very well-known independent engineer who does a lot of capacity tests. And we engaged with DNV last year about this time, actually, to have them do a very in-depth review of our methodologies, our technology, and in the way that we run capacity tests. And they've put together a report. We had a phenomenal 9 or 10 months working with them to understand, to validate what we're doing, give us recommendations, help us out with industry best practices as they see it, and help us understand how to communicate what we do out to the industry, out to the market. So we'll touch on some highlights from that as part of this webinar.
Excellent. Well, what else, if you're a performance engineer or an asset manager and you know nothing about Denowatts today, what else should these engineers and managers know that might make a difference in their lives?
Yeah. I was out at SAMNA, the Solar Asset Management Conference, a couple of weeks ago, and the three top items that keep popping up, it seems like every year, is we need better digital solutions, we need better trained workforce, and we need better availability to replacement parts. That's kind of the needs of this asset management industry. So if you're managing a team that's trying to scale with this growing portfolio of projects, and you find yourself getting behind in it because you're trying to manage data, you're trying to do reporting, you're using possibly techniques that you were still using 10 years ago, and you find your team's getting frustrated. That's where I think we can help, because we work with the major monitoring companies. We're a plug into them, so we help with that process of managing the portfolios and scaling with it to make sure that the data that's going in, the benchmark is the most critical part of understanding where you're at in managing the data, your assets. So we bring a focus to that.
So I have a question. Goes back to the $200 service. If we sign up for $200 service, you're monitoring the data in your unit. Are we also within that $200 a year service monitoring the data with your unit as compared to ours? And then could we get a remote sort of feedback saying, hey, for $200 a year, we'll tell you when your system is producing off? Is that like what goes into this $200 a year service? Because now I'm thinking about it for my own customers, just to let you know. This is now a sales call, Dan. Thank you.
Okay,
if you could,
perfect.
Send an invoice to CSG developers, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so we offer a few different levels depending on what people need, because we have some customers that come to us and say, our damn weather station just got struck by lightning again, and we needed a replacement. Wow. If you can believe it, and that's often in inroads where they say, okay, tell me about this wireless weather station that doesn't have issues when it comes to lightning. And we can offer that, and that's what generally the cost for that will be, I don't know, around $2,500 for 5 years of service when you add it up, and depending on the size of the site. On top of that, we have performance analytics and energy accounting, which was what most of our customers use, because what we do every day is we're using our machine learning processes to learn the operating profile of their site. And every morning, our machine learning systems have told us, okay, this is how much energy was made at every site and how much should have been made based on the learned profile of it. And this is the likely reason why we're underperforming. So it's that reporting and what I call energy accounting that is probably the biggest part of what we do. Solar has no generally accepted accounting principles yet. The closest thing to it is it's called ISO 61724-3, which is how you are supposed to report energy performance and underperformance. So we adopted that, and that's what we do for you every day.
So Dan, in our last minute together here, what is the future of this industry? Because I do believe that you're on the bleeding edge of this world of IoT and machine learning, but how do you see your technology evolving and the value that it adds to solar asset management?
Well, it's not 2012 anymore, Tim. And so many people are still operating like it is. Everything from capacity testing to how we set up sensors and set up our projects in the field, how we spend our time, how our asset managers spend their time dealing with when stuff goes wrong. And what I'm convinced, what I know is that in 5 years, it's not going to be the same. The advances that we've made, I just talked about Internet of Things and machine learning, and what AI certainly can do to help that. I think that we're going to see big changes in how we do predictive modeling, to help John get the right price for his projects. How we're going to be able to take what some in the industry have called a systemic 6% underperformance, that doesn't need to be, because I think we're going to get better, and we're going to have better data to know, well, is it really underperformance, or what else could it be? So I guess that's the future as we see it. It's better data to make better informed decisions.
Excellent. Well, check out denowatts.com, learn about the webinar on May 4th, and I want to thank Dan Leary, CEO and founder of Denowatts, for joining us today. We're going to let you go, Dan.
Thank you very much. John, you can send me the PO this afternoon. We got them ready to go for you.
I will, definitely.
All right. You take care, Dan.
That's cool gear. I like that. Say, I like this, Tim. You're helping me as a business person know my stuff a little bit better. So much
appreciated. It's about time I did something for John Weaver. Come on.
Yeah.
It only took me 2.5 years. So we're going to get into the news, and so much good stuff to talk about. Yeah, get your artsy glasses on, John. Come on.
Yeah. These are new. I told my uncle that I like to shrink all my text on my screen so I can read more. And he said, John, you should get reading glasses. So now I have cool artsy reading glasses. So thank you, Uncle David in DC, at a brighter image. So now I'm doing some advertising for the family. A brighter image in downtown DC. That's a commercial solar guy, family optician.
Well, our friends at Canary Media have written a story about Google and EDP Renewables, company I know very well and do community solar and CNI development with and for. EDPR has inked a very large deal, mainly focused on the Midwest, where they are going to be providing a virtual power plant, or a virtual PPA to Google, and but also supplying energy to low-income communities. This is a form of what some are calling synthetic community solar. The story is by Jeff St. John, just from 2 days ago in Canary Media, and I like this expression that that Jeff came up with: skip grid backlog, mimic community solar. And you and I, John, and all of the solar professionals out there doing small utility and utility scale are feeling lots of pain around getting our projects interconnected and permitted and onto construction in a timely manner. The friction in the system is amazing and extremely frustrating. But EDPR is going to be building a bunch of different solar projects, and then 10% of the money that they make is going to flow to 25,000 high energy burden households, including those located in communities that host the solar farms themselves. And they're focused on PJM here. There's the map of PJM, which is the largest ISO in the United States, I think by population. I don't know if it's the largest by geography, but largest by population. Did you notice this story in the news, John?
I saw the headlines and it's been popping up. I'm kind of the writing about it. It's a 500 megawatt AC project. I mean, it's not a, to the best of my knowledge. And so I'm wondering about the skip the internet thing, though, or is it a distributed group of many small projects that are tied together via a virtual PPA?
Yeah, there's 80 community scale projects. So these are community solar projects. These are DG on the order of 1 to 20 megawatts. And
all right. So they're DG projects, but they're connected to PJM, which means they're connected into the wholesale power grid, not to the local distribution. So that's kind of interesting. And then they're tying them together. I'll tell you what, though, they're still dealing with interconnection challenges, even at smaller sizes. I have a 25 kW AC project that's on hold while a substation is being upgraded in the local area. So that's interesting. But I did like the goal of community solar being on the lips of a company like Google. And if they're spreading it out and doing it with a company like EDPR, that's interesting. We might see more small scale projects instead of these huge, larger projects. I wonder what that means for the industry.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a both and, right? There will still be plenty of large scale solar projects happening. Many developers, that is their bread and butter. And we're swimming in real estate. It is not easy to get these projects through interconnection with the ISOs or with the AHJs, of course, but it's happening. It just needs to happen faster. And then we do have this burgeoning community solar market. And even if you don't have a true community solar market like we have in Illinois or like you have in New York and Massachusetts, you can apply some of the techniques used in community solar. I think that's one of the novel things about this relationship that EDPR has developed with Google, and the news is still forthcoming. So I can't say I have all the gory details on this. I look forward to learning more, but they're applying the principles of virtual net metering, which is what community solar really is about, right? You build a power plant out in a cornfield or on the roof of a factory in an urban area. It can be both and, right? On a community center. And then you sell that power to an off-taker, in this case, Google. And then you also, in this case, are involving this low-income population. Google is going to install Nest thermostats, right? Google bought Nest, the smart thermostat company. And then there's going to be this $12 million community investment fund, which will invest in pre-weatherization for customers who qualify to reduce energy burden over the long term. So Google's getting to decarbonize their grid, which they're very keen to do, and one of the largest, corporate buyers of clean energy nationwide, but also doing a public good. So that's, I think, the novelty here.
Well, I like the concept of a large corp like Google buying 80 distributed plants, because 80 distributed plants is 80 different maybe probably not 80 construction companies, but it's resources distributed greater. And one 500 kW plant within PJM is awesome. We love it. But having 80 plants means it's probably more than one installation company. It might be EDPR's very talented design and management team running them all. But then you have installers from across the nation, and you have power generation resources distributed more. So fundamentally, this kind of makes the grid more resilient because we have more generating resources. So I don't know, kind of cool. It's the next step of the VPPA. It's large-scale development, large-scale distributed development. I think I just made a new term, Tim.
Yep. Wholeheartedly agree. All right, well, let's move on. Some guy named John Weaver wrote a story in PV Magazine. Driven by solar, California's net demand hit zero on Sunday. Yes.
And then yesterday it hit a new solar generation record of 14 gigawatts and change on a utility scale. So really, this net demand number, it's a created value by the state of California, actually technically by the California ISO region, which is 80-90% of the state's electricity. And what the term means is total demand minus solar minus wind. That's it. That's what the term means. And so they just decided to show it off because that's the thing that's growing these days is this term. And in the future, hopefully they'll add geothermal as we start to scale that, and maybe even batteries, but I don't know if that works. But net demand is hitting zero. This is springtime record setting season because we know in the spring and in the fall, those are the shoulder seasons. The weather's a little more temperate. We don't have the AC on, we don't have the heat on, and things that always run, like wind and solar, they run as they run, those are allowed to generate and people shut off the gas. And this is what occurred. But it was a lot more complex. If you would show, that chart shows the great number where we can see it going under. But if you look at the next chart, it's very interesting because you can see that the power use, the power generation at the time is a lot more complex. I mean, here you can see that we have 6 or 7 different resources going on, including a whole bunch of natural gas, a massive amount of exports, a nuclear plant, hydroelectric, and charging batteries, all going on at the same moment that wind and solar are bringing down. And also, you look at that, like that green line that represents the big renewables number. Notice how it's not a nice, smooth, flat curve like solar is. That's because they're curtailing like set 1.7 gigs of solar roughly in the noon hour at this point. So, even hitting net zero, there's still curtailment going on. There's still exports. California is a complex market. Queso region is. But it's just cool. This is, the 4th largest economy on Earth. It's the 2nd or 3rd largest region. California has the largest peaks. PJM is pretty big. But this is neat. And here's the curtailment. We see wind and solar being curtailed during the course of the day, with it, peaking a little bit later in the afternoon, but with solar peaking near noon. And so all this coming together on a Sunday, and it's going to be maybe even better this weekend, but maybe it depends. It depends on the temperature. If it's really hot, then there's a lower chance of this occurring. If it stays cool, they get more rain. It looks like California is going to get more rain and maybe snow. If that occurs, then maybe we'll see some more records set. So
and this ability to curtail the solar, it has to do with smart inverters, I think, right? That the grid operator can actually throttle these solar projects remotely.
Yes.
With something called UL 1741, I think is the certification. Smart inverters. And but I guess one of my takeaways here is that the California grid is getting saturated with wind and solar, and it's not that we don't have a ways to go, because you also see there's still coal and lots of natural gas, and I mean a surprisingly small amount of coal, I guess, but
yeah, that's probably not a real power plant. That's probably some weird facility that uses it to make some steel or something. So who knows? Chris Letman told us that mid 80s for most of California this weekend. So maybe some air conditioning will be going on. But yeah, I mean,
wow,
there's a lot going on. It's daytime high noon right now is saturated without batteries. However, as batteries start to scale, this is going to evolve quickly. And by December 31st, 2025, we're supposed to have at least 11 gigawatts of resource adequacy, which is 11 gigawatts of capacity that can run from like 4 to 8 hours, something like that, because we're supposed to clean up. We were supposed to replace a nuke, and we have to handle that September peak, which is when California's grid is roughest. So yeah, there's going to be a lot more batteries. There's going to be 10 plus gigawatts of battery capacity absorbing solar at high noon pretty soon on this California grid. Like 2 years, 3 years. It's coming hard, and it's going to look a lot different just very, very, very soon.
Well, let's talk about robotic pile drivers. I had not seen this story before just now, so you've got another story from today, actually, in PV Magazine. You're busy. You're busy, John.
All the time, dude. All the time. This is what we do. This is from 8 to 10 a.m. Don't call me. I'm writing. I'm writing for PV Magazine.
Yep. So somebody has invented a robotic pile driver. You see a photo of it here with the piles on I don't know what they call that, some kind of a stand attached to the tractor, and then
I can
there's
tell you
no
all about it.
there's no driver in the seat.
So this is just a standard excavator. And if
Okay.
you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to see their computer, and you're going to see it's an autonomous excavator that has a robot built onto it. That little thing right there, that's their brain, and that controls the unit. It's dirt and water sensitive, and it's just a standard excavator. There's a couple images that show it clearly. Scroll down. There's another image below. Maybe that one will give you a nice. Oh, they didn't give. The boss cut that image. That's okay. So it's just an excavator that has a few components added, some arms, some racks, a hammer drill, and that computer system. So 4 components are added, and there's they said Built Robotic says that it's compatible with most mid-sized late model excavators in the 15 to 50 ton space. And they just added these components on the side to hold it. They can hold 200 piles at a time, and the machine roughly can deploy 300 piles in a day. And it's just you plug in. They say that that's faster than a two-person team of humans by 3 to 5 times, which sounds strong.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, I think, but anyway, it's a good number, 300 pounds a day. And what's interesting to me, here we are on the Built Robotics site. This is the company that makes the brains, the robotic brains, is that you can bolt this on to a standard excavator.
Yes.
I guess what we would call a late model excavator, something that was made in the last 10 years, I'm guessing. But and
they do at least 2 tasks. So right here, they're showing their ability to trench automatically.
Yep.
And on the other one, and this is the same machine. So if you start switching pieces off, on and off, take off the digger, throw on the hammer, just keep you can see this one. If you look at the back of that unit, you can see the little solar panel on the back of it, way sitting on the back of the unit there.
Why does it have a solar panel?
That's just how it's powered, I guess. Maybe it's backup power.
It's not completely electric, of course. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You're saying the electronics are powered with the solar panel.
Yes,
Perhaps,
sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, not the unit. Heck no, these aren't electric. Even though that would be cool if we had an
Someday.
electric unit.
Someday.
It's coming. But yeah, the same units. Yeah, that's the image I grabbed from my article right there.
Yeah.
The same unit can turn your excavator into an automated trench digger and a pile driver. You just got to switch out some components. I thought that was pretty neat. That, if anything, that's a pretty solid selling point. You can automate for different personalities. If I foresee somebody having an excavator with like 5 different arms over there, and you just do, it goes over, it changes the arm, starts to work. It sounds pretty sweet. I like it. So I would love to just hang out and watch and just. It's nothing magical. It's just tink, 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 tink. Okay, next one. Tink, tink. After about 4 of them, you'll be like, all right, I get it. I'm going to go now. But for watching the first 4, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is fun to watch pile driving. I have to say, I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd want to be one of the operators. They have to wear heavy ear protection, and even then, I'm sure it's hard on the ears and the body. But a necessary evil, so to speak, in solar. If we're going to have large scale solar, we need lots of piles driven.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I say, bring it on.
Yeah, like that piece of gear.
Oh, this is just a John Weaver fest today.
You don't have to do these stories in order. I just put them up there and let you pick and choose, Tim. But please show my stories all day long.
Yeah,
I write the best stuff, dude. The best stuff.
We want to show off John Weaver. This show exists because of you, John.
There we go.
So let's be real. Let's be real. So you got another story about New York large scale solar set to surge 8,500%. That's a big number.
So
Is it
because
real?
I like to
Is
write.
it real or is it?
No, real number. Real number. I'll tell you how I did the math. I'll tell you how, because I did the math myself. The first 80 or 100 megawatts of, and I can see a typo right there. Got to remove that T. I'll let Ann know. Hey, Ann Fisher. That's my boss at PV Magazine.
When I
Uh,
saw that this morning, I was like, "What is T80?"
yes, that's typo. That's typo 80. That's, we have many typos in the morning. Uh,
It's all good.
So the first 80 and actually 100 megs, the state's press release confused me a tiny bit, but the large scale renewable standard is a program where you can bid in every year into for 4.5 million renewable energy certificates, so 4.5 million megawatt hours of electricity. And any power plant you got that's clean, you can bid into this program. Solar, it seems, bids at 20 megawatts AC each. And oh, there's the interconnection upgrades, by the way. I found it for one of these plants. I just thought it was interesting. 704 grand in upgrades and a whole list of components and a new substation, essentially, for 700 Gs. I don't know if the whole substation's 700. That sounds cheap for a substation. That sounds like you're upgrading a substation to me. But, you know, so this large scale program started awarding solar projects in 16 and 17, and the first 4 or 5 of those have come online. They total 80 or 100 megs AC, and already the state has approved 6.8 gigawatts of new capacity. So since then, that hasn't come online yet. So this 80 to 100 megawatt is going to turn into 6.8 gigs. And so that's the growth number. So 80 turning into 6.8 gigs, that's 8,500%. That's John Fitzgerald Weaver having fun with headlines because, everybody writes a headline. I got to entertain the animals. And so that's what's coming. And, Tim, if you could manage yourself a solar construction firm, New York upstate, going from 1 meg to 30, 40 megs, man, you're going to be packed chock full of business. And I'll go over what this is. This is a pretty cool structure they have for how they support large-scale solar. But, there's going to be 10 plus gigs easily DC. I mean, we're talking 15 gigs through 2027 of solar being built in upstate, large scale. And it's going to be across hundreds of projects. And that sounds like a great opportunity for a bunch of teams to have some continuous work, like some robotic pile drivers. Now, there might be more ground screws in upstate New York than piles being driven because it's very rocky. But, that was my story there. It's the first projects came on for this program, and now it's about to take off right behind it because there's a whole bunch more following it. And every year, another gig or so of solar seems to be getting on this list.
Yeah, I mean, New York has set a goal of 100% RPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know by when, 2045 maybe?
40 possibly. 40
Yeah.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So you got to build a lot of solar. We're going to need a lot of robots. We're going to need a lot of robot wranglers. That's my new thing when
New
people
job.
talk about the AI taking jobs. Yeah, it is going to take some jobs, but we're also going to become robot wranglers. And that's a valuable skill to have. Even you and I, as content creators, have to be robot wranglers with ChatGPT and all these other tools that are emerging. So yeah, it's heady days. It's great to see New York leading the way. I mean, it's on the short list, right? It's one of 3-4 states that are really paving the way for everyone else to go, oh, okay, this is how you do it. And the program here in Illinois is largely modeled after what is happening in New York around community solar and large scale solar and residential and commercial solar too. That rec market thing, it works, right? It really does work. It incentivizes developers to do all this hard work and suffer through the process of getting their projects interconnected and approved by local authorities having jurisdiction.
I'd love to talk real quick about that equation that was at the bottom of that article and tell you how nice CERTA, and I'm super impressed. I might even write a whole story on it. But their index rec strike price, in order to guarantee 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour. In essence, New York State guarantees 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour for the high-end price of the renewable energy certificate, which is a good price for a large project. Then they say, okay, if, first we'll guarantee you 6 to 8 cents, somewhere in that range, but we will subtract out the value of the electricity and the capacity payments that you receive. So we'll guarantee you 6 to 8, and if you earn that much, then the state doesn't have to pay for it. But we'll make sure you get it, because that's how you get stuff financed. If you can't, if we got a $20 million project, 20 megs, it's going to be real hard to get the 25 million to get it built if you can't guarantee your revenue. So New York State has put in a process where they'll guarantee the revenue, and the ratepayer has a good chance, due to inflation, of seeing less and less and less of a bill on their hands over time. So NYSERDA is so smart, man. I want to just hang out with those people and listen to them talk, and maybe I'll just keep getting smarter by rubbing up against them. So I think many states should follow the examples like the VETR program. This is another great thing. They just come up with good ideas, and I don't know the nuances on all of them, but seems
I
like
wholeheartedly agree. NYSERDA is a real gem for an energy authority. It is a standout. Really, it is the best energy authority in the country. And if I was a governor, I would just copy and paste and recreate what they've done with NYSERDA. They fund all kinds of R&D around electrification of transportation and HVAC and high performance building, and of course renewable energy. Should we do one more story though? You found
Absolutely.
a story about Italian farmers saving an ancient fruit with solar power.
And the weird thing is, it's a fruit that's used for perfumes, so that you smell nice. I citron or something like that is the way. At least this particular farmer.
It looks like lemons to me, but
yeah, there were two different fruits. There was a lemon, and then there's a thing that looked like a lemon, but it looked like bigger and prettier. But that's like this citron thing, and so we got a citron, and that drives. Apparently that's a fruit that was old. It hadn't been around for a while. It was not doing as well because of the market shifting and weather getting complex. And now this farmer grows them underneath an agrovoltaic system. And he says that the units, which don't need full sunlight apparently, unlike say corn and soy, from what I'm taught, the units don't or survive better. They look better. And in one of the images, and I grabbed that quote from when I posted it on Twitter. He says, "Look at this perfect fruit." And he was saying that because more consistent weather and protected fruit leads to better fruit. He goes, when it's out in the open a little more, they get beat up, they get more bugs, they get more hot days. A hot day is a real bad thing for apples, I learned in the agrovoltaic research thing. Every hot day kills like a percent of all the apples or messes them up. But if you can protect them from the direct sunlight, you minimize the hot days by like 80%. So agrovoltaics, solar is improving farm yield. But then there was a second line that I thought was bigger, and this, touches on John Fitzgerald Weaver's, social political stuff. But somewhere in this article, they talk about the customer not selling their product at the low price that was being offered at the moment. They said, nah, I can leave my fruit on the tree. Let it sit up there for a little longer because the solar has subsidized my income. So I'm not beholden to the market right now and say super cheap pricing. And for me, the idea that a small scale farmer can better exist and have a more viable business, distributed farming, distributed business, distributed wealth. I want us all to be rich, I want us all to do well, but I want us all to have a shot. If corporate can take over every small farm because of one bad season, man, that sucks. But if the farmer can be more resilient as a business because they have not a cash flow that's going to make their money, but that's just going to cover their costs, and then the fruit becomes maybe the profit. I don't know. It just seems like a better financial situation. I don't know anything about farming, Tim. I'm about to start an agrivoltaic company, and I don't know jack about farming. That's
The only way to
arrogance.
learn is, I think,
Yeah.
just do it, John.
So, but I just reading that article. First off, I love the fact that it was on the BBC and it was a long format thing, and somebody took a lot of time to interview and research. And Italy right now, if the world wants to watch, Italy and Eastern Europe are at the cutting edge of already deploying, and companies like Enel, they're deploying great. And Iberdola, they're
Iberdrola.
Yes, sir. Thank you. They're a Spaniard company. I think they might be the state power company. They're doing massive. So there's a lot of experimentation in agrivoltaics, and we're only at like 4% of electricity. We got 10x to grow, 90% to deploy. If 10, 20, 30% of that can become agrivoltaics, that's something cool, man. So I like this story. It motivates me. It lets me talk better, and I don't know. Thank you, BBC. Good coverage.
Well, we've done it again. We've used up a very useful hour, and I want to give a shout out to the Midwest Solar Expo. We will be in Chicago next week, Monday through Wednesday, at the Midwest Solar Expo with Jake Rosemarin. So please come out and see us there. 600 solar professionals are gathering in the Windy City. And so love to hear from our listeners and viewers. Check us out at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review. Tell your friends about the show and subscribe to our YouTube channel. How can our listeners find you, John Weaver?
Scream really loudly out a window. Commercialsolarguy.com is the best way to find us. Another place is LinkedIn. You can type in Commercial Solar Guy or John Fitzgerald Weaver, and I'm on Twitter all the time as Solar in Mass. But visit our website. We're gonna make it better. But come on by, say hi. Tim, what do you do for a living, and how can people call you and find you and help you go on vacations?
The best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I love networking on LinkedIn, so just look for Tim Montague. There aren't very many Tim Montagues. There are a few other Tim Montagues out there, but not many. You'll find me. And but go to our website also, cleanpowerhour.com, and come to Chicago. I would love to see many listeners in Chicago at the Midwest Solar Expo. With that, I want to say, let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague. Take care, John.
Okay.